Beloved, your soulmate has reached a point where silence no longer feels safe to them, and there is one sentence repeating inside their mind right now: this may be my last chance to tell you everything. They know they have waited too long. They know there were moments when you needed honesty and received distance instead. They know they cannot keep assuming that you will remain emotionally available while they search for the courage to say what should have been said much earlier. And now, for perhaps the first time, the possibility of permanently losing the opportunity to speak has become more frightening than the truth itself. They want you to hear them. Not because you owe them another chance. Not because their feelings should automatically erase what happened. But because there are things about the connection that they never explained, and your soulmate is beginning to understand that if they remain silent much longer, you may spend the rest of your life remembering a story that was missing half of its truth. They do not want that. Your soulmate has been carrying words they almost gave you many times. There were nights when they opened your conversation and stared at your name. They typed. Deleted. Typed again. Sometimes the message was only, "Can we talk?" Other times, they wrote paragraphs. They tried explaining everything. The fear. The confusion. The moments when they pushed you away despite wanting you closer. The things happening in their life that they never properly told you about. Then they imagined your response. Perhaps you would ask, "Why are you telling me this now?" That question stopped them. Because they knew they would have to admit something uncomfortable. They should have told you earlier. Much earlier. Your soulmate may have spent months telling themselves that they remained silent because they were protecting you. Sometimes there may have been truth in that. But now they see the part fear played. Silence protected them too. As long as they never confessed everything, they never had to hear you say that it was too late. As long as they never reached out, they could keep imagining that somewhere inside your heart the door remained open. They could live with possibility. Possibility is safer than reality. Reality has answers. And answers can hurt. But something has shifted. Your soulmate no longer wants to live inside possibility. They want truth. Even if truth does not give them the ending they secretly hope for. This is why their heart is saying, "Please don't ignore me." Not as a command. Not as something you are required to obey. It is the frightened request of someone who finally understands that your attention cannot be taken for granted. There was once a time when your soulmate believed you would always answer. Maybe they would disappear and return. And somehow, you were still there. They became accustomed to your patience. They may not have consciously intended to take advantage of it. But familiarity can make precious things appear permanent. Your soulmate began believing that no matter how complicated everything became, there would eventually be another conversation. Another chance. Another moment when you would understand. But your energy changed. They noticed. Perhaps you stopped reaching out. Maybe you no longer reacted to the small things they did to see whether you still cared. Perhaps you became quieter online. Maybe you simply stopped carrying the relationship visibly. Whatever changed, your soulmate felt it. At first, they thought, they're upset. Then time passed. And you did not return to the old pattern. Your soulmate began wondering, what if they're not upset anymore? That thought frightened them much more. Because anger can keep a person emotionally attached. Peace can release them. Your soulmate realized you might be reaching peace. You might be reaching the place where their explanation no longer determines whether you can move forward. For a long time, you wanted answers because answers felt necessary for healing. Then perhaps you began discovering that you could heal without them. That was when the balance changed. And your soulmate felt it. Suddenly, they were the one looking for signs. Do you still care? Do you think about them? Did someone else enter your life? Would you answer if they contacted you? The questions you once carried have moved toward them. And they have learned something through this discomfort. Uncertainty is exhausting. They understand you differently now. They remember how many times you asked, "Is everything okay?" Maybe they answered, "Yes." But everything was not okay. You could feel it. You asked again. They became irritated. They thought you were pressuring them. Now your soulmate understands that you were reacting to a contradiction. Their words said nothing was wrong. Their behavior said something had changed. You were trying to make the two realities match. They did not help you. Instead, they sometimes made you feel as though your sensitivity was the problem. That memory hurts your soulmate now. Because perhaps your sensitivity was not the problem. Perhaps it was accurately noticing what they were trying to hide. They were afraid. They were conflicted. They cared. And they did not know what to do with those emotions. So their behavior changed before their words did. You noticed. Of course you noticed. Your soulmate understands this now. They want to tell you, you were not imagining it. Those words are part of the confession. You were not imagining the connection. You were not imagining the sudden emotional changes. You were not imagining that there were moments when your soulmate looked at you differently. They felt it too. Perhaps that truth once seemed obvious. Then their actions made you question everything. Your soulmate wants to repair at least that part. They want you to know that what happened between you mattered to them. Even when they acted like it did not. But there is something else. Something deeper. Your soulmate has been hiding why they became so afraid. It may have started long before you. Before your name existed in their life, someone or something taught them that love could become dangerous. Maybe they trusted someone and were betrayed. Perhaps they grew up inside relationships where affection could disappear without warning. Maybe they watched people promise permanence and leave anyway. Perhaps vulnerability was mocked or punished. Your soulmate learned a rule. Do not need anyone too much. They did not say this rule aloud. It became behavior. Stay independent. Do not reveal everything. Keep an emotional exit available. If you feel too much, pull back. Then you entered their life. And the rule began breaking. Your soulmate did not expect to care about you as deeply as they did. At first, they enjoyed the connection. It felt exciting, natural, perhaps strangely familiar. They could talk to you longer than expected. They found themselves telling you things they did not usually tell people. You noticed details. You remembered. You asked questions that made them feel seen. At first, being seen felt beautiful. Then it became frightening. Because you were becoming capable of hurting them. Not because you had done something cruel. Because importance creates vulnerability. The more you mattered, the more your soulmate had to lose. So their old protection system activated. Pull away. Control the closeness. Reduce the emotional risk. Your soulmate may not have consciously planned this. They simply started behaving differently. They replied later. They became harder to read. They sometimes acted more casual than they felt. You noticed. You became uncertain. And your uncertainty made you move closer. You asked what was happening. You wanted reassurance. Your soulmate felt pressure. They pulled back more. The pattern grew. The more you tried to understand, the more they tried to protect themselves. The more they protected themselves, the more you needed to understand. Neither of you may have known what was happening. Now your soulmate sees it. They want to tell you that the distance was not always lack of feeling. Sometimes it was the opposite. They felt too much. But this is important, feeling too much does not automatically excuse what they did. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that too. They do not want to come back and say, "I hurt you because I loved you." That would be too simple. Love does not remove responsibility. They want to say something more mature. I cared deeply, I became afraid, and I handled that fear badly. That is different. They are beginning to own the behavior. And this is perhaps why they feel it is their last chance. Because they know that words without accountability will not reach you anymore. You have changed. There may have been a time when hearing, "I miss you," would have been enough to reopen everything. Now you ask, what does that mean? There may have been a time when, "I still love you," would have answered every question. Now perhaps you think, then why was I treated like I was optional? Your standards have become clearer. Your soulmate knows. They are not only preparing to confess emotion. They are preparing to answer for behavior. That is what scares them. But it is also what makes this different. They may want to tell you about the nights they almost came back. Perhaps you had no idea. Maybe you thought they were completely fine. Your soulmate may have been sitting alone scrolling through old messages. They found a photograph. A voice note. A conversation where you were both happy. They remembered how easy everything felt before fear became the third person in the relationship. Maybe they held the phone and whispered, "I ruined this." Then pride entered. Don't contact them. Then fear, they probably don't care anymore. Then another thought, if they cared, they would contact me. This thought allowed them to remain passive. But somewhere inside, they knew you had already tried. You had already reached. You had already opened doors. Your soulmate began using your silence as justification for their silence after you became tired of being the one creating every opening. Now they see how unfair that was. You may have stopped because you needed evidence that they would participate. Instead, your soulmate interpreted your pause as proof they should stay away. Two people remained silent. But perhaps for different reasons. You wanted reciprocity. They wanted safety. Neither received what they wanted. Your soulmate now believes one of you has to interrupt the pattern. And because you already tried before, they know it should be them. That is why they keep thinking, "This is my last chance." Maybe nobody told them that. There may be no literal deadline. The urgency comes from awareness. They know life moves. You move. Feelings evolve. People arrive. Opportunities change priorities. You cannot remain emotionally suspended forever. Your soulmate knows that every day they wait, the person they eventually approach may become more different from the person they remember. Maybe that has already happened. You have become stronger. Perhaps more guarded. Maybe happier. More focused. You may no longer need validation from the connection. Your soulmate feels both admiration and fear when they think about this. They are proud that you are growing. But your growth means they cannot return casually. They cannot bring the same uncertainty and expect you to make room for it. They have to bring something different. Truth. That is what they want to tell you. Everything. Perhaps the confession begins with, "I need to apologize." Your soulmate knows this should come before romance. They may say, "I know I made you question things you should never have had to question." Perhaps, "I know there were moments when you tried to understand me and I shut down." Maybe, "I know my silence made you feel like you did not matter." Your soulmate may struggle to say these things because speaking them means confronting the before, "I miss you." Before, "I want you." Before, "Can we try again?" They need to acknowledge what happened. Impact they once avoided. But there is another confession behind the apology. They want to tell you what was happening when they disappeared. Sometimes they were staring at your messages and did not know how to answer. Not because the words were unimportant. Because the emotional weight felt enormous. You might have asked a simple question, "What do you want?" For you, it was a request for clarity. For your soulmate, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. If they said, "You," everything would become real. Expectations. Vulnerability. Possibility of loss. So they avoided answering. What your soulmate did not understand then was that refusing to answer also created an outcome. You gradually learned not to ask. They may tell you they regret that deeply. Your soulmate also wants to confess that there were times when jealousy affected them even though they had no right to show it. Perhaps someone gave you attention. Maybe you mentioned another person. Your soulmate acted indifferent. Inside, they were not. They wondered whether someone else could give you what they were refusing to give. That thought terrified them. But instead of using jealousy as information, "I care about this person more than I'm admitting," they sometimes used it as another reason to withdraw. Your soulmate thought they were protecting pride. In reality, pride was preventing communication. They know this now. Maybe they will tell you, "I acted like I didn't care because I cared too much about looking unaffected." That sentence may explain several moments. But again, explanation is not permission. Your soulmate understands the distinction. They are not asking you to pretend the past never happened. They are hoping you will understand what was underneath it. There is another thing they may reveal. They did not always believe they deserved you. This could surprise you. Perhaps from your perspective, your soulmate looked confident. Maybe even arrogant sometimes. But confidence and self-worth are not always the same. Your soulmate saw the way you loved. The loyalty. The attention. The emotional depth. Part of them wanted it desperately. Another part thought, "What happens when they realize I'm not who they think I am?" This fear can make people sabotage closeness. If your soulmate believed disappointment was inevitable, they may have unconsciously tried to control when it happened. Better to create distance now than be rejected later after becoming even more attached. Of course, this logic becomes self-fulfilling. They behaved in ways that eventually pushed you away. Then your departure appeared to confirm the fear. See? People leave. But your soulmate is finally realizing they helped create the outcome. That realization has been difficult. Because it removes the comforting belief that everything simply happened to them. They had choices. They made some poorly. That does not make them irredeemable. It makes them responsible. And responsibility is where change can begin. Your soulmate wants to tell you that they are changing. But they know better than to expect you to believe that based only on words. Perhaps they have already begun noticing their patterns in other relationships. They communicate more directly. They are trying not to disappear during discomfort. Maybe they apologize to someone they normally would have avoided. Perhaps they have begun reflecting more seriously on why intimacy frightens them. These changes may be small. But your soulmate sees them as preparation. Not preparation to manipulate you into returning. Preparation to become someone who can handle a healthy connection if another opportunity appears. Because they know this, the old relationship cannot return. If anything happens again, it has to be new. A new beginning between two people who remember the old pattern but do not recreate it. Your soulmate may say, "I don't want us to go back." At first, those words may alarm you. Then they explain, "I want us to go forward." That is different. Back would mean the same dynamic. You reaching. Them hesitating. You questioning. Them withdrawing. No. They do not want that. They want a relationship where difficult feelings are named. Where someone can say, "I'm overwhelmed," without disappearing. Where you can say, "I need reassurance." without being treated like your needs are inconvenient. Where both people understand that conflict does not automatically mean abandonment. This is what your soulmate is beginning to imagine. But there is a complication. They are afraid you may already be done. Perhaps someone told them you are happier now. Maybe they saw something that suggested your life is moving. Your soulmate may have seen you smiling in a way they had not seen during the difficult months. That image could have affected them deeply. They thought, what if they found peace by removing me? That question hurt. Because if their return threatens your peace, what right do they have to ask for access? Your soulmate is wrestling with that. And perhaps this is why their confession will sound less demanding than before. They may say, I need to tell you everything, but I understand if you don't want anything from me afterward. That is growth. They may still secretly hope you say, I still care. But they are beginning to understand that the purpose of truth should not only be to get a desired response. You deserve the truth even if the truth earns them nothing. That is accountability. Your soulmate may finally tell you why they never explained certain things. There could have been family pressure, an existing commitment, career stress, financial problems, mental exhaustion, a situation involving another person. Perhaps some details genuinely made the connection complicated. But your soulmate knows now that you should have been given enough context to choose how much emotional energy you wanted to invest. They made decisions for you. We won't tell them because it will hurt them. I'll pull away because this is better for them. I'll return when things are sorted out. Your soulmate thought they were controlling damage. But by excluding you from the truth, they also excluded you from decisions that affected your heart. They want to apologize for that. You were an adult capable of choosing. Perhaps you would have walked away sooner. Maybe you would have stayed with clearer boundaries. Your soulmate will never know. Because they did not give you that choice. That regret is part of what they want to confess. They may say, I thought I was protecting you, but I was also protecting myself from losing you. That sentence contains more honesty than many of their earlier explanations. They were afraid truth would change everything. So they postponed truth. And eventually secrecy or silence changed everything anyway. This is one of the lessons they cannot escape. Truth delayed does not disappear. It becomes heavier. Now your soulmate carries it. And they want to put it down. But they do not want to dump it into your hands and make you responsible. They simply want you to hear. This may be why they keep imagining the first few seconds of the conversation. They call. You answer. Silence. Perhaps you say, hello? Your soulmate's entire speech disappears. All the carefully prepared sentences vanish. They hear your voice and suddenly feel every month of distance at once. They may say, it's me. As though you would not recognize them. You might respond, I know. That small exchange could break something open. Then your soulmate says, please don't hang up. I just need a few minutes. Again, you are free to decide. But if you listen, perhaps the confession begins slowly. I should have done this earlier. Pause. I was scared. Another pause. I know that doesn't excuse anything. Now you listen more closely. Because perhaps this is the first time they are not using fear to avoid responsibility. They tell you that they thought about you. Frequently. That there were things they saw and immediately wanted to send you. That sometimes they opened your profile simply to see whether you seemed okay. They admit that they wondered whether you hated them. They may even say, I thought it would be easier if you hated me. You ask why. Because hatred would create finality. If you hated them, your soulmate could stop wondering whether a future remained. But not knowing kept them emotionally attached. Perhaps they secretly hoped you still cared. That hope became both comfort and torture. Your soulmate might say they tried to move forward. Maybe they met someone. Perhaps nothing serious happened. But the experience taught them something. They could enjoy another person and still notice that something inside them remained unresolved. They began comparing not appearances but emotional safety. The way you listened. The way you noticed. The way you challenged them. They realized they were not looking for another version of you. They were looking for closure with you. Perhaps love too. But at minimum, truth. Your soulmate may say, I realized I was trying to start new chapters without finishing the sentence I left with you. That is why they returned. Not necessarily to demand that the book continue. To finish the sentence. And perhaps the sentence is, I loved you. Past tense. Present tense. Your soulmate hesitates. Then corrects themselves. I love you. Those words may reach the part of you that once waited desperately to hear them. Be careful with that part. Honor it. But do not hand it complete control. You may have wanted this confession once. Now your needs may be different. You may need to know, what does your love look like in behavior? That is the mature question. Your soulmate needs to be prepared for it. Perhaps they answer, it means I stop disappearing. Good beginning. It means I tell you what's happening instead of expecting you to guess. Better. It means I listen when you say something hurt you. Important. It means I understand that you don't owe me another chance. Powerful. These answers do not guarantee success. But they reveal awareness. Then you may ask, why now? Your soulmate knew this question would come. They take a breath. Because I finally realized I kept waiting for a perfect moment that doesn't exist. Maybe. Because I heard something about you moving on. Possibly. Because I realized silence was going to become the final answer if I didn't change it. Perhaps that is the deepest truth. They thought they had time. Now they know they do not control time. Your soulmate may have recently experienced something that reminded them how quickly life moves. Maybe a friend lost a relationship unexpectedly. Perhaps someone close to them said, if you have something important to tell someone, tell them. Maybe your soulmate saw how regret changes a person when words are permanently delayed. It triggered them. They thought of you immediately. What if one day circumstances changed and communication became impossible? What if you moved far away? What if you committed to someone else? What if years passed? Would they still be carrying, "I should have told them"? That possibility became unbearable. So the decision was made. Speak. Not because the outcome is guaranteed. Because truth deserves a chance. This may be why your soulmate feels such urgency. But beloved, their urgency does not need to become your panic. If the conversation comes, stay grounded. You are allowed to say, "I need time." You are allowed to hear the entire story and remain uncertain. You are allowed to forgive without reconciling. You are allowed to tell them that their explanation helps you understand but does not immediately rebuild trust. If your soulmate has genuinely grown, they will respect this. They will not say, "This is my last chance, so you have to decide now." No. A genuine confession gives you freedom. Emotional manipulation removes it. Pay attention to that difference. Your soulmate can say, "I felt this might be my last opportunity to speak." That is their feeling. They should not turn it into, "You must respond before it's too late." You deserve time. You deserve calm. And perhaps your soulmate finally understands that. They may have spent a long time controlling the pace. They decided when to come close, when to withdraw, when to return. Now, if they approach, they must allow your pace to matter too. Maybe you need a week. Maybe a month. Perhaps you do not want another romantic connection but are willing to hear the apology. Your answer belongs to you. Your soulmate's confession does not purchase a particular outcome. It offers information. That is all. Then both people choose. This is healthier than the old dynamic. Your soulmate also wants to tell you something about the way you left. They may have misunderstood it. They thought you walked away because your feelings disappeared. Maybe someone finally explained that you were simply exhausted. That revelation may have changed them deeply. They now understand that the opposite of love is not always leaving. Sometimes a person leaves precisely because they cannot keep losing themselves while staying. Your soulmate recognizes that you reached that point. Perhaps they want to tell you, "I understand why you left now." That could be one of the most healing parts of the conversation. Because perhaps you spent so long wanting them to understand. You were not trying to punish them. You were trying to survive emotionally. The uncertainty became too much. You needed your own life back. Your soulmate sees this now. They may say, "You weren't asking me to be perfect. You were asking me to show up." Exactly. They may admit that at the time, showing up felt impossible because they associated emotional responsibility with losing freedom. Now they understand real partnership differently. Showing up does not mean losing yourself. It means allowing another person to know what is happening inside you. This is what they want to learn. Perhaps they have already begun. They may tell you about conversations they have had since the separation. Maybe they apologized to family. Maybe they became more open with friends. Perhaps they stopped automatically saying, "I'm fine." Your soulmate may be practicing honesty in smaller places before bringing it back to you. That could be meaningful. Still, let behavior speak over time. Anyone can sound transformed during an emotional confession. The real test comes afterward. Does your soulmate communicate tomorrow? Next week? When they feel secure? When disagreement appears? When there is no fear of losing you in the immediate moment? Consistency reveals whether their confession represents growth or only a temporary emotional breakthrough. You deserve to know the difference. Perhaps after telling you everything, your soulmate says, "I'm not asking you to trust me immediately." That would matter. Maybe, "I know trust has to be rebuilt." Good. What do you need from me? Even better. But do not feel pressured to give them a checklist that turns their growth into another job for you. They need to contribute thought too. You can communicate needs. You should not become their emotional instructor. They know some basics. Honesty. Reliability. Respect. No disappearing. No emotional games. Your soulmate must practice these without requiring constant reminders. If another chance comes, your responsibility is to be honest about your own heart. Maybe you have habits to change too. Perhaps you overgave. Maybe you ignored your intuition. Perhaps fear of losing them made you accept ambiguity longer than you should have. A new beginning, if it happens, can involve growth on both sides. But do not take responsibility for their silence simply because you want things to feel balanced. Balance does not mean dividing every mistake equally. Each person owns their part. Your soulmate owns theirs. You own yours. Then perhaps both people can meet without carrying unnecessary blame. Your soulmate may say there is something else they have never admitted. They were proud of you from a distance. They watched you become stronger. Maybe they saw you achieve something. They wanted to congratulate you. They did not. Pride stopped them. They thought contact would look like an excuse. So they stayed silent. But privately, they smiled. Your success affected them. Not because they felt entitled to be part of it. Because they knew how much you had struggled before reaching that point. Your soulmate may tell you, "I saw you becoming the person you always said you wanted to become." This may surprise you. You thought they were not watching. Perhaps they were. But again, hidden support is not the same as visible support. Your soulmate understands this now.